Good morning, everybody. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Monday, June 22nd, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Shin Se-min. Before we begin, here are the stories we're following at this hour. South Korea continues to see worrying number of new coronavirus patients, reporting nearly 50 on Sunday alone. Imported cases also reached 90 last week, double the number from the week before. More behind-the-scenes details are emerging about North Korea-U.S. diplomacy in John Bolton's memoir. The former national security advisor says neither Kim Jong-un nor President Trump wanted South Korean President Moon Jae-in at last year's three-way summit at the DMZ. President Moon Jae-in will be sitting down for an anti-corruption policy consultative council this afternoon aimed at making a fairer nation and society. Our starting point this morning, more cases of COVID-19 were reported in the central city of Daejeon on Sunday. The city has seen so far 36 cases in just 1 week span of time. Now, the rise is largely due to an outbreak linked to door-to-door sales. Our Lee Seung-jae leading us off.
On Sunday, 3 more cases of COVID-19 were confirmed in the central city of Daejeon, some 160 kilometers south of Seoul. In a span of just a week, 36 people have been infected in the city. The latest cases include patients in their 70s and 80s and are linked to a door-to-door sales business that sparked the outbreak in the city. Dubbed the nth transmission, the initial infection has led to secondary, tertiary, and chain transmissions. And the number of nth transmission related to the door-to-door sales business is rising. Health authorities, however, are all the more concerned as these businesses target senior citizens, leading to an uptick in the number of elderly patients.
We'll carry out inspections and crackdowns on unreported and unregistered companies in cooperation with the city, districts, and police.
The problem doesn't end in Daejeon. According to quarantine authorities, the outbreak in Daejeon has also spread to other cities like Jeonju and Gwangju. In response, the government has designated additional high-risk facilities to include door-to-door sales companies and distribution centers.
We'll add door-to-door sales businesses, logistics centers, large cram schools, and buffet restaurants to the list of high-risk facilities, and strict quarantine measures will be in place as of 6 p.m. on June 23rd.
With door-to-door sales businesses being the source of COVID-19 outbreaks in Seoul and Daejeon, quarantine officials are concerned such sales practices could further spread the virus to other cities. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korean government will be enhancing quarantine measures against Pakistan and Bangladesh as both countries are linked to many of the latest imported cases of COVID-19 here in South Korea. Seoul's health ministry said on Sunday that it will restrict the issuance of visas and non-regular flights, imposing a 2-week mandatory self-quarantine on entrance and testing all of the arrivals. Now, for those who hold E9 working visas, quarantine authorities will make sure they have a place to stay during the quarantine period. The measure takes effect starting this Tuesday this week, and similar preemptive quarantine measures will also be enacted for other countries that see a surge in COVID-19 cases. Shifting focus, North Korea says it'll soon send anti-South Korea propaganda leaflets over the inter-Korean border. The regime's state-run Korea Central News Agency reported Monday that they have prepared around 12 million leaflets tied to 3,000 balloons. They said print factories across the regime are making the anti-Moon Jae-in administration leaflets, and they will reach the center of South Korea, which could also mean Seoul. It added that South Korea should experience how annoying it is to clean up the mess left by the leaflets. The exact date of the leaflets will be flown is still unclear, but some predict it could happen on the 70th anniversary of the start of the Korean War, which is Thursday, June 25th. Former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton has not only criticized President Trump in his memoir slated to hit the stores this week, but he also appears to be critical of South Korea in the lead up to the nuclear talks between North Korea and the U.S. Our Kim Hyo-sun explains.
If Kim Jong-un had said yes there, they might have had a deal. Disastrous for America. That is what former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton wrote in his upcoming memoir titled The Room Where It Happened, a White House Memoir. When Pyongyang and Washington had yet to reach an agreement on where to hold the landmark summit between the two leaders, Bolton said he hoped the whole thing collapsed. He called the situation, quote, disastrous when the two countries agreed to hold their second summit in Hanoi. Bolton was also critical of South Korea's Moon Jae-in administration for facilitating the North Korea-U.S. summit, saying President Moon gave both Trump and Kim unrealistic expectations. He's also quoted as writing that the whole diplomatic fandango was South Korea's creation, related more to its unification agenda than a serious strategy. The hawkish former senior official also wrote that he asked his South Korean counterpart Chung Eui-yong to avoid discussing denuclearization at the April 27th Inter-Korean Summit. On the Seoul-Washington joint military exercises, Bolton explained that President Trump had repeatedly complained about how expensive and provocative they are and how he viewed them as a waste of money. Bolton also explains that President Trump has voiced dissatisfaction on the stationing of U.S. troops in South Korea, stating that Trump said he did not understand why America had fought the Korean War and why there are still so many American soldiers on the Korean peninsula. President Trump has accused his former top national security aide of lying, taking to Twitter to say Bolton has broken the law by releasing classified information, insisting that he must pay a big price for the book. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Staying with that story, President Trump's ex-national security advisor John Bolton can go forward with the publication of his memoir as the federal judge has denied the Trump administration's request to block it from being published. However, in an order released Saturday, Judge Royce Lamberth noted that Bolton's conduct raises grave national security concerns. He explained the Justice Department's push for the ban came after the book was printed and shipped across the country ahead of its scheduled Tuesday release, hinting that it was too late to issue a restraining order. On this very day in 1965, 20 years after South Korea was liberated from Japan's colonial rule, Seoul and Tokyo signed a historic agreement normalizing their bilateral ties. And those treaties opened up a new chapter for their bilateral cooperation, but left some of the major issues unresolved to this day. Arirang lays out some of those and tells us where the two countries currently stand.
55 years have passed since Seoul and Tokyo established diplomatic relations, but their ties are chillier than ever. The key dispute stems from their different interpretation of the definition of Japan's colonization, which is closely linked to the issue of wartime forced labor. The 1965 Treaty on Basic Relations says all treaties or agreements concluded between the two sides during the colonial rule on or before August 22, 1910 are, quote, already null and void. South Korea believes the term means nullifying the justification of the annexation. It was seen that way by the South Korean Supreme Court that ordered Japanese firms to compensate Korean forced labor while clearly stating such an act was illegal. However, Tokyo insists that nullify means terminating the previous treaties that were legally signed. Another source of tension comes from the agreement on property and claims on economic cooperation that says the agreement terminates individuals' rights to file independent damage suits. South Korea's top court saw that those suits do not include cases of infringement of human rights, deciding to freeze the local assets of a Japanese steel company that refused to compensate the victims. Japan responded by sending a strong warning of retaliation upon the sell-off of the company, while insisting Seoul had violated international law for not abiding by the deal. Most recently, their ties have been further strained over Japan's UNESCO-listed wartime industrial facilities. The country so far has not kept its promise to address its past use of Korean forced labor at its recently established information center built on the infamous Hashima Island, prompting South Korean officials to send a letter requesting UNESCO to remove the listing. Against this backdrop, the Seoul-Tokyo trade spat continues at the World Trade Organization and is unlikely to be settled anytime soon. 이경은, Arirang News.
At the nation's top office, President Moon Jae-in will be chairing a meeting this afternoon of the Anti-Corruption Policy Consultative Council, which aims to build a fair society. He's expected to call on officials to take stern measures against crimes that impact people's livelihoods already burdened by COVID-19. And those include fraud, voice phishing, and cyber gambling. They'll also discuss ways to root out unfair online transactions amid a rise in non-contact purchases. President Moon last chaired the meeting of the council 7 months ago. Over in Russia, President Vladimir Putin says he is considering running for yet another term in office if voters approve a constitutional amendment change that would enable him to do so. In an interview with state news agencies, Putin said he does not rule out the possibility of running for office if this comes up in the constitution. Russian voters will cast their ballots from June 25th till July 1st on proposed changes to the constitution, including an amendment that would allow Putin to seek 2 more 6-year terms as leader when his current term ends in the year of 2024. The changes have already been given the green light by Russia's parliament and constitutional court. Staying in overseas, 3 people were stabbed to death over the weekend at a park just outside London in what police have since labeled it a terrorist incident. Local media reported Saturday that a man attacked people with a knife at Forbury Gardens in central Reading, injuring 3 others. A witness recalled that moment, saying that a man shouted words they couldn't understand and suddenly started stabbing people. Police arrested a 25-year-old Libyan man at the scene on suspicion of murder.
Good morning. It's shaping up to be the hottest day of the season so far for some parts. In fact, a heat wave advisory has been issued for many inland regions, including parts of Seoul. Eastern parts of the country will also notice a big temperature hike this afternoon. Northeast inland regions could see 5 to 20 millimeters of passing showers along with thunder and lightning during the day, while the rest of us will be under burning sunshine all day. In fact, eastern parts of the Jeollado provinces, Gwangju and Jeju will have extremely strong UV rays, so don't forget your UV rays protective items. Unprotected skin can burn in minutes. So we should be really careful when exercising or working outside today. Highs in Chuncheon could get up to 36 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Gwangju, Gyeongju getting up to 32 degrees. But much awaited heat relief is on the way with nationwide monsoon rain starting from Wednesday. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
And that's our time at this hour on Arirang News, but we'll be back with more of today's headlines coming up in our later newscast slated for noon Korea time, so stay close. As always, thanks for watching.